Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Glad you all could join me. So, as usual, I will be answering questions that were pre submitted by my wonderful Patreon patrons first, and out with everybody who is here live in the chat. So, if you are in the chat and you have a question, or you are planning on being generous and giving me a super chat, or just something that you want to chat with me about, please hold on until I get through the patron questions, and then I'll hang out with everybody in the live chat for a while. So, without further ado, let's get to the questions that were pre submitted by my wonderful Patreon patrons. And here we go. First question is from Andrew Priest, who says, "Good evening, Steve. No question today, so I guess not the first question. But not a rant on guns like last week. I just wanted to say thanks for wishing my wee Baron a happy birthday. She was absolutely made up that she's known to a, quote, famous person. My little girl is right. Out of all the swearing men I've known, you really are the loveliest. Ironically, I did have to beep out your swear. She is only 4 after all. Thanks again. It really did make her day. Take care of yourself, mate." Well, I'm glad. When Sarah asked me to do that, I was more than happy to, and I'm glad that she appreciated it. And yeah, is it ironic that you had to beep out the swear, or is it appropriate, or just on brand? And if I recall, and I may be misremembering, but I think the swear was Dana's idea, because I did the shout out in one of my streams with Dana. I think it was the last read away. I think it was the last read away, um, where I did the shout out. Uh, and and I think Dana said, if you're lovely swearing man, you should at least drop in a swear, and of course I did, because I do whatever Dana says. So it's, you know, hopefully the bleeping out of the swear was not a problem, and if it was, it's all Dana's fault. Next is Philip K, who says, "Hey Steve, no question, just thought I would give an update. Last Ask Away, I shared that my girlfriend had tested positive for COVID and that I was waiting to take a test. I tested positive for COVID. I quarantined with my girlfriend. She passed away May 4th. I'm otherwise fine. I showed barely any symptoms and show none now, but I'm still hurting. I All I can tell you is how sorry I am. I mean, reading your question for the first time. I'm not reading it for the first time right now. I've pasted it into a document. I've read the question ahead of time, but I mean, I read it, I guess, the day you posted it, and I mean, it's like it's like a punch in the gut, I mean, and I know that's infinitesimal compared to what you're going through, and I cannot possibly express my condolences and my sympathies enough to you and to her friends and family and all of your shared loved ones. It's it you know it, it's not something to be taken lightly, and it's a very serious disease. And maybe, like, the fact that I have been so fortunate, and the fact that not just myself personally, but that I don't know anybody personally in my own sort of private circle who has gotten extremely ill from it. I've known several people who have tested positive, and even a few who developed symptoms, but I don't know anybody who got really, really sick from COVID, let alone died from it. So, I mean, it's easy to get sort of lulled into this sense of, well, we're through the worst of it now, and people are getting vaccines, and the numbers are starting to trend down a little bit, and we're coming out of the tunnel, and things are going to be okay. And just I think yesterday the CDC said if you've been fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a face mask in most circumstances, and it's not over. Like, this is still a really dangerous, really serious thing. And I cannot tell you how sorry I am. And I don't know what else to say. I'm thank you for the update. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for feeling comfortable enough with me and with my audience to share something so wrenching and personal. And I'm just really, really, really sorry. So, anyway, um, Tony Nagatani says, "Would you mourn for mourn?" Well, I mean, who mourns for who? What would I say? Who has two thumbs and would mourn for mourn? This guy. Of course, I would mourn for mourn. Mourn is mourn is the linchpin that keeps the whole thing together. Mourn is the anchor of Quark's bar and casino, right? You gotta if something were to happen for Morn, you would have to mourn for Morn. Next question is from Isaiah Taylor, who says, "So I'm a Billie Eilish fan, and her recent accomplishment is her Vogue pinup photo shoot that got her over 1 million views in under 5 minutes, a record for Instagram. On the other hand, Bill Maher, whom I've stopped listening to finally, attacked young people for having Twitch accounts and cryptocurrency. I have also had shit from some baby boomers for going to film school. Between Billie Eilish and Bill Maher's bullshit, I got to thinking about a concept called e-socialism. E-socialism is the achievement of socialism through individuals achieving economic freedom and public ownership through digital entrepreneurship, as opposed to capitalism through corporate means. We, as the public, including me, did give Billie those million likes, and she and her brother Phineas make and own their music. Twitch players do the same, albeit through a corporation, but not directly under it. I do believe that this is a more acceptable form of attaining socialism. Thoughts? I mean, I think a lot of socialists who are sticklers for the definition of socialism would probably argue that that is not actually socialism. But it's more like it's a more sort of democratic, accessible form of capitalism. I mean, and because even there, even in situations like that, like Billie Eilish was famous already, and not all Twitch streamers are able to even make a living, let alone make a whole lot of money. Uh, on Twitch, just like a lot of YouTubers. Trust me, a lot of YouTubers are are not getting rich making YouTube videos, and the vast majority don't make any money at all or don't make any significant money. So it's not necessary. I mean, there would still be sort of a tiered system. There'd still be the haves and the have-nots. So it's not. I don't know if it's necessarily the solution to or if it's a more attainable way of reaching the goals of socialism. I'll put it that way, of reaching like a kind of social equality. Um, I don't know if it's easier to do it that way than it would be to do it some other way. Um, but at the same time, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. And I think people that do achieve success, through those platforms, that maybe opening those up and making it more accessible to more people and making it easier for more people to be more successful would definitely be, I think, a good thing for society. But would that be a form of socialism? I don't know. Like I said, I think people who are sticklers for the definition of socialism and are sort of strict interpretations of interpreters of that would maybe quibble over whether or not that's socialism. Um, Next question is from Trick Simpson, who says, "Hey Steve, returning patron, didn't realize payment hadn't gone through. Rewatching TNG and got to season 6's lessons. Starfleet is stated to allow relationships amongst command structure. How do you feel this type of episode would be seen today with Me Too, etc.? As a rape victim myself, I don't have a problem with the episode, but I'm not sure if it's colored by my love for the show or not. Me Too allowed me to talk about my rape after 23 years, and I'm glad it exists. But I think some writers would be wary of this story today." I don't think the story, or at least I'll put it this way, I don't think the premise is necessarily problematic. I think if it were being written today, you would want to approach it differently and you would want to center a different character in the story. And what I mean by that is Lessons was about Captain Picard. Captain Picard was the center of that story, and what happened to the lieutenant. Oh, what was her name? I can't think of her name. Um, but his love interest in that episode, um, Nella something. Her first name was Nella, but what I think it was Nella. But anyway, um, but she was not the center of the story. It was Picard's story, and she was sort of a foil to tell a story about Picard and to move his story forward. And I think if you were going to tell the story today, you would need to send you Darren. What is Nella Darren? I didn't. Maybe people are saying it in the chat. I wasn't looking at it. I think it was Nella Darren. But anyway, um, I think you would need to center her story more, and I think you would need to make it more about the power imbalance. Not just because the episode as it exists is about like, oh, it's complicated. The captain dating an officer that is under him in the command structure. It's an awkward, difficult situation for Picard to navigate, right? Which it was, and it would be if it was real life. But Picard is the one in the superior position in the power imbalance. I think if the episode were done today, you'd want to focus more on the person who is in the inferior position in the power imbalance and the difficulties that she would have um, from navigating a relationship like that, and the ethical concerns of even if Picard doesn't intend to have power over her or doesn't intend to manipulate her or exploit her or benefit from the fact that he is in the superior position, that there are certain ways where you just can't avoid that. And that's why those sorts of relationships, even if it's allowed, I have to believe it's probably culturally kind of discouraged. Even though it doesn't break regulations, it's not necessarily the kind of thing that an admiral is going to encourage. And so I think the episode, if it were made today, would have to focus more on those things, um, and less on Picard's discomfort. You know, um, Next patron question is from Dan G. Tasby 12, who says, Steve, today I want to ask you about heaven. Let's say that you die and find out there is life after death. You don't go to meet God, who is ready and eager to cast your atheist ass into the flames of woe for not believing in him. Rather, you are in Valhalla with the rest of humanity, where any wish or desire is fulfilled. What would you like to do? Meet Abraham Lincoln? Toss back a couple of brews with Babe Ruth or Satchel Paige? See planets thousands of light years away? See what life will be like in the 23rd century? The possibilities are literally endless. I could not find it, but years and years ago, I wrote a little, I guess you would call it like a poem, but it was inspired by the REM song Man on the Moon. And because I love that song. And I remember when we're talking back when I was like a teenager, right? And I first heard that song and I just like went completely mad for it. And because I love Andy Kaufman, and Andy Kaufman had a period in his career where he was involved in professional wrestling, so there was crossover there that I loved. And it's there's he's and that's the song is about Andy Kaufman. And there's a line in the lyrics of that song where it says, I'll see you in heaven if you make the list. And that inspired me to write a list of things that I would want to do if heaven existed and if I made it to heaven. And one of them was, of course, talk to Andy Kaufman about wrestling. And then there was a bunch of other ones too that I cannot remember for the life of me. But yeah, meet Abraham Lincoln. That would be great. You say toss back a couple brews with Babe Ruth or Satchel Paige. How about watch some baseball games? How about watch like some all-time all-star games? That would be awesome. That would be awesome to put together like an all-time all-star team or two all-time all-star teams and then have them play each other. That would be awesome. Getting to meet artists who are no longer with us, whose work I have admired and whose work has shaped me as a person, like Buster Keaton and Stanley Kubrick, and meet my favorite my favorite poet, Emily Dickinson, like that would just be really cool. And yeah, visiting other planets, traveling forward to see the future, absolutely, that would all be, I mean, I would have forever, right? I would have the rest of eternity to kind of play around. It would be like living in the good place. So yeah, that's something like that. But yeah, you mentioned baseball players. It would be, yeah, not maybe hanging out and having a drink with them would be great too. But let's play some baseball. And I could indulge myself enough to even say, like, maybe I could like play catch with Babe Ruth or Honus Wagner or Willie Mays. Or Willie Mays isn't dead yet, but when Willie Mays is dead, he'll get to Valhalla, and I can play catch with Willie Mays, or Hank Aaron, who unfortunately has passed away. Yeah, I mean, there's if we could limit ourselves just to baseball, and I would that would kill a few millennia, I think. Next question is from Agent Meister, who says, "Greetings, Shivatron. I was scrubbing the bathtub the other day when a thought suddenly struck me. How awesome would a sitcom that had a Wayun clone and Brunt from the FCA as its two lead characters be? They could be running a haberdashery on the promenade or something." Now, I know what you're thinking, Steve. At least I think I know what you're thinking, but I have no doubt that Jeffrey Combs would knock it out of the park, and that the series as a whole would be considered the pinnacle of human achievement in years to come. Just a thought. Also, I'd like to compliment you on the t-shirts that I see you wearing on your videos. My particular favorite is the blue one with the Fleischer Studios Superman logo. You are clearly a chap of great taste and distinction. Live long and prosper. The Meister has spoken. P.S. New series of The Whirlpool. When? Well, to answer the last question first, I don't know, but the Whirlpool is not completely finished. I do want to do another series of the Whirlpool. I'm just not exactly sure when that will be. I haven't even started writing it yet, but it's not completely gone. So, I mean, I can't tell you when. I don't have anything on the schedule for it, but I do want to get back to it at some point. So rest assured, there will be more Michael Worley coming up at some point in the future. And thank you for complimenting me on my choice of t-shirts. I feel like I could have been a little more creative for this one, since that's the question. But I like my disco shirt. And I really like. I was wearing it the other day. I don't think I wore it. No, I wore it. I wore it in the Trek Reluctantly stream on Wednesday with Dana. The Enterprise, the USS Enterprise shirt, the sort of vintage, like distressed tee that's kind of like a slate blue. I really like that one too. That's a really good t-shirt and really comfortable, and I think it looks really cool. So yeah, but I think the Fleischer Brothers Superman shirt is my favorite too. I really like it. I think it looks decent on me, and I love the Fleischer Brothers Superman. It's my favorite Superman. So thank you for noticing. And yes, I think the Jeffrey Combs Wayun Brunt sitcom is a great idea, and it's a great way to put a whole bunch of money in Jeffrey Combs's pocket, and God knows he deserves it. And let me see. Next question is from Siamak, who is not submitting his question at the 11th hour this time. Well, good for you, my brother. First, I fully support the lust for life joke. Thank you very much. Had to do it, but come on. If you're talking low-hanging fruit, Weekend at Bernie's? Come on. Okay, so to my action, by the way, that's a really good point, and other people have pointed that out as well. I totally could have and probably should have done a Weekend at Bernie's joke about Kevin in The Magnificent Fringy. Anyway, okay, so to my actual question, I've often asked about your thoughts on the GOP eating itself, and while I want to be fully on board with your fuck 'em position, and in my heart I am, in our current two-party system and how polarized we are, I'm fearful. In the long run, the GOP either abandons Trumpism or it dies in good riddance, but they can easily win back the House in 2022, and it'll be the MTGs leading the way, not Kinzinger, who, while awful, doesn't bow to one man. Do you have the same fears, or do you think they'll implode faster? If it's faith in our fellow Americans, boy howdy, we may be in trouble. Obviously, I'm writing this Wednesday night after the party abandoned all pretense of not bending all the way over. Ousting Liz Cheney from the House leadership for no other reason than she would not affirm the deranged lies of Donald Trump. That's the only reason that she was removed from the leadership. Is I mean, I would say it's discouraging, but really it's completely in character for where the party has been, for where the party has always been, but for where the party has been openly and publicly for the last 5 years. I mean, ever since Donald Trump came to the forefront of the party and was embraced tighter and tighter as he got more and more power. Like the more inevitable his win in the primaries became, the more spineless the Republicans became, and people who were saying like, no, we can't nominate Trump, it would be a disaster. As soon as he won, they forgot all about that and they fell right in line. It's the old saying, Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. And Trump showed us how absolute that is. Like there is no, apparently, even, and the people who don't fall in line are invited to get the hell out. So am I worried that they can take back the House? Of course I am. Of course I am. I'm worried that they can take back the House. I'm worried of the effect that these voter suppression laws that are being proposed and passed in states all across the country are going to have. I mean, that's serious stuff. And the reason that Republicans are pushing laws like that is because they know that it works. They know that it's, if they can pass laws that make it more difficult for people, especially people of color, people in low income brackets, people who historically tend to skew more Democrat than Republican, if you can make it harder for those people to vote, it's easier for Republicans to win, even though they do not have the numbers. Like absent cheating, they don't have the numbers to win elections like this. That's why they cheat, so they can win, and it works. So I'm really worried that they'll take back the House. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, and I hope they don't. But could it be? Yes, and it scares the shit out of me, and I hope it doesn't happen. So yeah, and I mean, I agree with you that in the long run, if they continue to embrace Trump and they continue to embrace his conspiracy theories, in the long run, I do think it kills the party. But yeah, by 2020, by 2022, no. And yeah, um, I have the same fears. I don't think they will implode by the next election. And next question is from David Colby, who says, I've been rereading one of my favorite books. They're these papery things with words in them, and then you read the words, and they form a kind of imaginary TV show similar to your Star Trek right inside of your brain. I've heard of this. This one is called 1632, and it has the totally realistic, 100% plausible sci-fi premise of what if a West Virginian coal mining town got translocated to Germany 1632. Hilarity ensues. M60 versus Pike Squares and arquebusiers, whatever those are. I'm not a medieval nerd. I don't know what those are. More likely than you'd think. Anyway, I was wondering what you'd be doing in that kind of situation, because it's not like you're in the past alone. You have 3,000 to 4,000 other Americans who can help out, right? So it's better than being just flung into the past by yourself. Also, your computer comes with, so win-win. Well, not really. You're still stuck in the 30 Years' War, which killed 1 out of every 3 Germans alive at the time. Sorry, Steve, you're going to die. And also, I'm not sure how useful my computer would be completely removed from the infrastructure that actually makes it useful. Like, I would have all this information on my computer that I couldn't use. I mean, I guess if it was my laptop, I could use it until my laptop battery died, and then it's a brick. And even before my battery died, like there's no internet, there's no electrical grid. Like there's what could I possibly use this computer for? Like, but sure, I would have it. That would be neat. Yeah. What would I do? I would, yeah, you're right. I would probably die. Like, what would I do if I were suddenly transported back to Germany in 60? I would probably die is what I would do. I don't think that is an environment that would, benefit me. Let's put it that way. Next question is from Carl Roberts, beautifulest one. Hey, Steve, I hope this note finds you well. There's so much happening in our world, the continued conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians, the Russian hack into our petrol pipeline, the continued killing of black citizens by their police, and the implosion of what was the Republican Party. It can be overwhelming. I'm an optimist by nature and have recently concluded that my innate optimism must be intentional. It won't survive this dismal climate without intentionally moving in the direction of hope and not just expecting that my natural proclivities can withstand such repeated blows from the worst of human nature. Do you consider yourself an optimist? And if so, how do you maintain a hopeful outlook? Also, relating to your YouTube membership, do you prefer Patreon or the support through YouTube? Sending wishes for continued joy. Well, thank you so much for always being such a ray of hope and sunshine. I always love I getting to see you during the patron hangouts when you get to show up and reading your questions. So thank you for helping to maintain my optimism and my hope. I really, and that's sincere. I really appreciate that. If you are already a patron, which you are, and you're comfortable with that, I would say just stick with that. Just continue to be a patron because that, there's really, I think I get to keep a little bit more of the pledges from Patreon than I do from the membership fees. I don't think it's a huge difference, but I do think Patreon lets me keep a little bit more. After you subtract the Patreon taking its percentage and the different fees and stuff they charge you, I think I still keep more of my Patreon pledges, generally speaking, than my cut of the YouTube memberships. But if you're already a patron, I would say stick with being a patron. And if you are neither a patron nor a YouTube member, do whatever is more convenient for you. If you are supporting other people on Patreon already, so you already have an account, and it would be easy for you to just add me to the mix and become a patron instead of becoming a channel member, that's great. If being a channel member and just clicking that join button and selecting your tier and doing it all through YouTube is more convenient for you, then I would encourage you to do that if you want to support the channel. It's really up to you. And that's the main reason why I enabled the memberships, because I know that it's a revenue source, right? I mean, I could use all of those I can get. And I know there are probably people who watch my stuff who enjoy what I do and who could afford or would be inclined to support the channel financially, who would do so if it was just something simple. If you didn't have to go to another website and open an account or whatever, if you could just click a button and click, like a radio option, and there it is. And they take it out of your credit card or whatever. And it's all done right there on YouTube, and you don't have to go anywhere else. You don't have to worry about it. So that's why I enabled the channel membership. But if you're already a patron, I would say just stick with being a patron. And yes, I do consider myself an optimist. I think I don't know if it's intentional or if it's like a survival instinct, but I feel like I wrote a video over the last couple of days that I haven't shot yet. I'll shoot it maybe over the weekend or possibly on Monday, but it's my video for this coming Wednesday. And it's another Where Do We Go From Here? And it's about gun control and gun violence in general. And that's a subject that I've talked about a lot on this channel and over the years, but I haven't done a video just about that for a while. And one of the reasons for that is that I find that subject incredibly depressing and incredibly discouraging, because it's like a broken record. Mass shooting, nothing happens. Another mass shooting, nothing happens. 40,000 people die from gun-related deaths in total. That's everything. That's homicide, suicide, accidental death, cause of death undetermined, but it's something to do with a gun, right? That's like everything. 40,000 people a year. And it's been that way for years, right? It's been over 30,000 for a long time, and it's been flirting with 40,000 for a long time. And last year it was actually over 40,000 for the first time, at least for the first time in my lifetime or in my recollection. And it's been at the 38, 39,000 deaths a year level for years. And it's just depressing. And I don't know if I would be able to face continuing to talk about it and continuing to try and push for reform in that area if I didn't have an innate sense of not so much that things are going to get better, but that things can get better, that something better is possible. That's the kind of optimist that I am. I don't necessarily believe that things will get better, but I believe that things can get better. There is the potential. And if I didn't have that, and I believe that, and if I didn't believe that, and if I didn't have that to fall back on and to sort of return to when things get really depressing and really discouraging, then I mean, I don't know. It would be pretty bad. So yeah, I do think I'm an optimist, like you. So that's why it's nice to have you around. Um, General Contact Unit Problem Child says, I believe it's probably impossible to keep a liberal democracy from slowly turning into an oligarchical dictatorship, but I think something like this is the best shot you could have. Just write a detailed description of civil, economic, and workers' rights into the Constitution, then say anyone who's unwilling to pledge support for this is ineligible for public office. A lot of libs think fascists shouldn't be allowed to run for office because fascists only want power so they can take away people's rights and hurt them. Well, to my mind, regular conservatives just do the same thing in a less direct, more drawn out way. Why not ban them both? P.S. The Tories are trying to introduce unnecessary voter ID laws. If 100,000 British people sign this petition, Parliament will hold a public debate on the efficacy of the law. And there's the link right there. It is petition.parliament.uk/petitions/576024. So if you are a British person and you want to support this petition and force a debate on this voter ID law, I would encourage you to go to follow that link and sign that petition. I haven't checked it. I don't know how many signatures there are, but if they need 100,000, I'm sure if they need 100,000 and they got 200,000, that would be even better. So I would encourage any British person watching this who has not signed that petition to check that out and sign that petition. And yeah, I mean, the way you describe it at the beginning of your question, writing civil, economic, and workers' rights into the Constitution, and then saying if you want to serve in public office, you need to be willing to support this. I think that's a great idea. Because presumably the Constitution would need to be ratified through a public vote, through a popular referendum of some kind. And if you could achieve that, if you could get that Constitution ratified and enacted, and then it becomes the law of the land. I mean, of course, anyone who wants to serve in a government that is constituted by the Constitution, you would need to pledge your loyalty to that Constitution. And if workers' rights and economic justice and civil rights were explicit parts of that Constitution, which I think they should be and could be, and you know, there's no reason why we couldn't have that now. We couldn't pass amendments to our current Constitution that wrote that into the law, that said workers' rights and civil rights and economic justice are principles of this country that must be upheld and must be supported and must be valued and pursued. There's no reason why we couldn't do that, I don't think. And if we did that, and then we said, and you have to swear allegiance to this Constitution if you're going to serve in the government under this Constitution, that just makes common sense to me. You know, so it would probably be difficult to get it passed because there would be so much opposition to it from conservatives and right wingers, et cetera. But I think it's a great idea. And if we were able to make it happen, I think it would be terrific. Next question is from Kemp Chalmers, who says, hey, Steve, your last Trek Actually video was awesome. Quark is my favorite DS9 character. After O'Brien, I named my son Miles. I've been binge watching your Just Ask videos. Do you still like The Three Stooges? Do you like any other martial arts movies besides Street Fighter and The Karate Kid? You should check out The Boxer from Shantung and The Clan of the White Lotus. I think I've been banned from the YouTube chat. Could you tell me why and what can I do to get back in? I'm very sorry for any transgressions I've made. Clasping hands together. I'll be good, I promise. You would have to, what you should do is maybe private message me on Patreon and tell me what your YouTube name is, and I'll check and see if you've been blocked from the chat for some reason. And if you have, I'm happy to unblock you. But I can't just, you know, and I mean, I can't just tell you off the top of my head. I don't know. But if you privately message me your YouTube handle that you think has been blocked, and I will check. And if you have indeed been blocked, I'll be happy to unblock you. But yeah, I do like the Three Stooges. Yeah. I haven't watched a lot of them lately, but I've told the story before that when I was a kid and into my adolescence, I didn't really think the Three Stooges were that funny. And then randomly, I was visiting my dad about, I don't know, it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. And while I was visiting with him, he was watching the Three Stooges, and I watched it along with him. And for some reason, something just clicked, and it was so funny. It was just, I was dying. It was so funny. So I don't know what the difference maker was, but I didn't used to like them, and then all of a sudden they were just absolutely hysterical to me. So yeah, I still do like the Three Stooges. And yeah, I like martial arts movies. I'm not super into them, but yeah, I like Street Fighter. I like the Karate Kid, if you can call that a martial arts movie. I like the original Street Fighter, the Sonny Chiba one. I like some Bruce Lee movies. I like Enter the Dragon and Way of the Dragon. I like a lot of Jackie Chan movies. We did one for late seating, I guess maybe last year or year before last. We did Drunken Master 2, which I thought was brilliant and hilarious and wonderful. Um, so yeah, I like martial arts movies, and thank you for the recommendations for the boxer from Shangtung and Clan of the White Lotus. I will try to remember those, and if I do end up no promises that I'm going to check them out, but if I do end up checking them out, I will try to remember to let you know. To let you know what I thought. Next question is from Alice Louise Watson. Do you think there is anything one can personally do to help others trust science anymore, or are we too far divided? Thinking about this in terms of the CDC changing mask guidance for those fully vaccinated. It's not so much that we're too far divided. It's the reason that we're divided. People who are anti-mask and anti-vaccine or are extremely skeptical of those things at this point, they didn't reach that position based on a logical argument. It's a little bit like someone who is professing like really, really extremist anti-science, like religious views. You know, someone who believes that that the earth is 6,000 years old, or that the earth is flat, or that the Bible as they interpret it is 100% literally true, or that, you know, evolution didn't happen, things like that. There's no way to move someone logically off of that argument because they didn't arrive there logically. It doesn't mean that people can't be persuaded, and many people have been persuaded and have changed their minds about stuff like that. But I don't think a reliable way of doing it is by arguing logically or by trying to appeal to their reason, because reason's not what got them there. So I don't know how we can convince people who don't trust science to trust science. I mean, I that's sort of above my pay grade. I think probably the best thing that you can do is to just talk to people and ask them why they feel the way they do, and then explain to them why you feel the way you do. And it might not work, but if you appeal to a person on a one-on-one level and you try to reach them emotionally and make a connection with them and try to communicate your point of view with them and listen to theirs, that might be more effective than trying to argue them out of it rationally. Because I really, in many cases, if not most cases, I don't think that's a good strategy. I think the reaction of a lot of people in that case would be just to become more entrenched in their own views. Because, like I say, they didn't arrive. There is no rational argument for not wearing a mask during this pandemic. The evidence is clear that it helps. You know, there is no rational argument for not getting a vaccine if you are able to get a vaccine. None. There's no argument against it. So if you are deciding not to, or you are deciding that you don't want to wear a mask, or you don't think wearing a mask is necessary or right to require people to do it, there's no rational argument that'll move you off of that, because that's not what got you there. So yeah, but I mean, I don't know. You know, it's going to be it's tough. It's tough to argue with people who aren't receptive to rational arguments. Jacob Monroe says, hello, Steve. What did you think of Blood and Guts? Blood and Guts, of course, the big event last week from All Elite Wrestling, headlined by the Blood and Guts match, which is AEW's version of the War Games match, where it's 2 teams of 5 fighting in 2 rings surrounded and covered by a massive steel cage with a top on it. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I didn't think it compared with like the best of the classic war games matches. Like I thought that the war games from like 1992 with Sting Squadron versus the Dangerous Alliance was probably. I mean, nothing in Blood and Guts touches that. And actually, the 91 one was really good too, I think. And the one at the 89 Bash was good, and the first one from 87 is really good. I mean, there have been some really great war games matches in the 80s and 90s, and I don't think Blood and Guts really was as good as any of those. But I thought, that's not to to disparage it. I thought it was really good. And I thought it had some really cool spots. I thought Sammy Guevara was a fucking star in it. I thought he was amazing. I thought the finish was a nice idea. I know a lot of people kind of poo-pooed it because you could tell that when Jericho fell off the cage, he was falling onto a crash pad. But I mean, the visual of that wasn't great because you could tell that it was a crash pad. But I mean, of course, I don't want him falling on actual concrete or actual steel. I want him to be protected when he takes that kind of a bump. And of course, even though he was protected, he still did legitimately hurt his elbow. So, I mean, I don't really have a big problem with that either. I thought it was a good match, and I thought the show in general was a good show. I was happy after that show was over and I went to bed that night. I was a happy wrestling fan. So I would give Blood and Guts, both the match and the overall show. I would give that a thumbs up for sure. I liked it. So next question, and try to see if you can guess who this one is from. Next question is from the spirit of school years yet to end. Who do we know who would pick a name like that? I know you're a pro masker and still wearing your mask, even though you've gotten the vaccine. This is true. The CDC has said that people who are vaccinated can mostly go without masks, but businesses are still allowed to require employees and customers to wear them. I also know you're anti-cop, in the sense that cops who are, quote, good people still choose to participate in a corrupt, oppressive system. And I know you are not a filthy, profiteering capitalist, although I would encourage everyone to become a member of my channel. But for the sake of the question, let's imagine an alternate universe in which your pap and granny ran an antique shop. You started helping as a teen, and they set aside a corner of the office for your computer. When you started making videos, the comfortable chaos of the shop made for intriguing backdrops. The shop doesn't make much money, but it's a connection to them. Of course, you require that customers wear masks. If you had someone come in to browse who refused to wear a mask and insisted that you weren't allowed to require it, would you call the cops? First of all, let me just point out the wonderful world building in that question. What an exquisitely imagined and realized vision of, oh, your pap and granny ran an antique shop. And it really paints a wonderful picture. I wish my pap and granny had run an antique shop now. I would call the cops as a last resort, as an absolute last resort. If I had a mask policy where I was asking customers and employees to wear masks while inside the store, and someone came in and they were not wearing a mask, and I pointed out the policy to them and asked them to wear a mask, and they refused, and I couldn't convince them otherwise, and I asked them to leave and they didn't leave. Like if we were at that kind of an impasse where they're not wearing a mask and I can't get them to put a mask on and I can't get them to leave, then yes, I think I would call the cops, because at that point it's a safety issue for me and for the other customers and for my employees. And, but I would make that an absolute last resort. I would not, because I do think that I am not an absolutely never call the cops person, but I do think unless it is an urgent situation where it's like a life or death situation, or it's the kind of thing that you just cannot resolve it yourself, I would encourage people to think twice about involving the cops pretty much in any situation short of something like that. So I would not want to call the cops, and I would try everything I could to resolve the situation. without that. But if it came to that, I would call the cops as a last resort. Yeah. Dataport doll. Evening, Steve. I have a more generalized question to your profession. These days, it feels as if I'm the last person on YouTube. Most of the people in my co-creator sphere, as it were, have jumped ship for Twitch. I don't necessarily blame them, even if it leaves me feeling very alone in a strange way. The monetization is obviously better on Twitch, no matter how exploitative Bezos bucks are to streamers there. But I'd love to know why you stay on YouTube. Is it as simple as that Twitch doesn't suit pre-scripted vids like Trek Actually, or is there something more nuanced in your calculation? Love always, DD. Well, thank you for the question. Um, it's pretty much just that I'm not. And I realize the irony of saying this during a live stream, but I'm not really a streamer. I mean, I do actually. I was talking with Dana about this earlier, and she pointed out that on a typical week, I do more live streams than I release recorded videos, and I mean that has been the case since last year. But I still don't think of myself primarily as a streamer, and my income through YouTube does not come as a result of these live streams. I make a little bit of money off the live streams from ad revenue and from people who are kind enough to throw in a super chat here and there. And I mean, and I'm very, very appreciative for it. And I love everybody who helps me out that way. And I encourage you to continue doing that. But the live streams, generally speaking, don't really put a lot of money in my pocket. They don't pay the bills. So I don't consider myself a streamer. I feel like my creativity comes through most strongly and most effectively and in the best way through my pre-recorded videos when I have a chance to write something and shoot it and edit it and craft it and make it as good as I think I can get it. Like that's where my strengths are as a creator, as an artist, as whatever the hell I am. Um, and I don't know if Twitch is the right platform for that. You know, yeah, Twitch. If I were primarily a streamer, I might consider jumping over to Twitch or doing more on Twitch than I do on YouTube. But for the moment and for the foreseeable future, I might start sort of if I ever start doing multi-platform streaming where I would basically be doing the same thing I'm doing now, but it would just instead of streaming just on YouTube, it would also be on Twitch and on Facebook Live and on Periscope or wherever. I could see doing something like that through sort of a multi-streaming platform, but I don't think I would ever jump exclusively to Twitch because I don't really think of myself as a streamer primarily. I think of myself as someone who does pre-recorded, edited, composed, crafted videos, not just live stream. So it's no more complicated than that. But it's a good question. Some random geek who wonders how liberals feel about their government supporting the Palestinian Holocaust. If a system only works while good people are in power, it's a terrible system because eventually bad people will come to power. Checks and balances are a good idea as it limits power and spreads it over multiple people, but this will also fail since eventually bad people will be in charge of the checks and balances. And if your solution is some variant of we need to vote the right people into power, then you don't actually want to change the system at all. You just want the system working for your side. This also applies to anyone who complains that voters are voting for the wrong people. If you want a system that truly limits the amount of damage bad people can do, you need a system that prevents power from being concentrated in the hands of any person or group. And since power has to go somewhere, your best bet is to spread it evenly among everyone so no one has more power than anyone else. Yes, voting is important, but it won't lead to meaningful change. Thoughts? I mean, I think you know what I'm going to say, which is I don't think the system you are describing is feasible in the long term on a large scale. I mean, I think it may be feasible with us with small groups for certain periods of time, but I mean, in a country like the United States with 330 million people, that is one of the most prominent countries in a world of 8 billion people. What do I think? I mean, like I could not, it's not that the arguments you're making are invalid, but I could apply them to any kind of a system that you would propose too. How do you, let's say you establish a system where power is evenly distributed. How do you maintain that indefinitely? How do you prevent people from accumulating power in such a society? And I mean, Like, how do you maintain a system that prevents people from accumulating power that does not itself become an oppressive system, whether that's your intention or not? Like, I feel like we're kind of stuck with deeply flawed, imperfect systems of government that are never going to do 100% of what we want them to do for everybody. And I don't think that an anarchistic system is necessarily going to be any better or any more stable or sustainable than what we have now. I'm not saying that it's impossible that it wouldn't have any benefits or that it wouldn't improve anything. But do I think that it's like when I hear people describe it and talk about it? First of all, I'm dubious as to whether or not it could even be implemented successfully on the kind of scale that it would need to be implemented to make a difference in a place like the United States. And second of all, I just don't see how I I don't see how you could maintain that kind of a system and guarantee that it would not be vulnerable to the same abuses that are fucking up the system we have now. I mean, and that's been my position for a long time. And I haven't changed that opinion. So those are my thoughts. But and as always, thank you for sharing with me and with everybody else your thoughts. John Burns says, you mentioned at the last Ask Away, so you watch someone else's videos? So you watch someone watch videos. Yep. There's not much to do in a city where you should wear your mask while walking down the sidewalk, although I've yet to see police stopping people for that. The bars and restaurants are all closed due to COVID, so there's no reason to head out anywhere except for shopping, appointments, and the occasional walk. I understand your comment, but with things spiking here in Alberta and they've stopped allowing AstraZeneca shots to be given out for vaccines as some died of blood clots after getting their shots, putting those who got their first shot in a kind of limbo. But I also like watching Mike Vaughn's videos at On My Mind Entertainment. It's nice in this time of anxiety to see someone who's at ease and relaxed, and he reviews the reviews of movies comparing them to one another. Your pattern provides you with money and options to work while at home. How else does Steve keep entertained while in the home? I mean, lately I just watch a lot of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And go, I mean, things aren't as bad here as you're describing them there in Alberta, which I'm really sorry to hear that. So, I do get out and go for walks and get some exercise. If I'm not, if I have a chance, if I'm not working, and otherwise I'm working, I'm working on YouTube stuff. So that's what keeps me busy. And yeah, I mean, look, I don't mean to disparage it. If watching videos of someone reviewing someone else's reviews, if that is entertaining for you and you get something out of that and helps you get through the day, then more power to you. I mean, I've said before, I don't understand let's play videos. I don't understand the appeal of watching other people play video games. Like, I just don't find that entertaining at all. But if you do, good for you. Like, I don't want to be Bill Maher. I don't want to be the kind of person that's like, I don't like it and I don't get it, so you shouldn't either, and it's stupid and it sucks and you suck for doing it. Like, I don't want to be like that. I personally don't get the appeal. It doesn't appeal to me. We've had a lot of fun in the live chat over the last couple of months, of people, giving me a hard time about how I don't like role-playing games. And I don't like role-playing games. I don't get the appeal. They don't seem like fun to me. I've never played one or wanted to play one. I'm not the least bit tempted to play one. It doesn't sound like my idea of fun at all. But lots of people I know, lots of people I respect, lots of people I love and adore play role-playing games and think they're awesome and think they're one of the best things that they do in their lives and get a great deal of enjoyment out of them. And I would not want to take that away from them or make them feel bad for doing that ever, for any reason, for even a second. So, just because it's not my thing to watch videos of someone watching videos doesn't mean that I want to take anything away from you. So if watching those videos makes your life better and entertains you and is a good thing for you, then great. I think that's awesome. So there you go. Just wanted to make that clear. Bruce Bartup, good to see your name again, my friend. Bruce Bartup says, if a federal law was introduced requiring all Americans to get photo identity for voting, but allowed each citizen to vote in the state and district of their choice by post, for example, could you get behind that? That's tough. I mean, it would really depend on on if there was a plan to make sure that everybody got that photo ID. I mean, the problem, I don't think it's necessary to require a photo ID to vote. And even if you establish programs to make it easy for people to get photo IDs so that you can reduce that gap between the rich and the poor, so that people who don't have a lot of money or don't have access to reliable transportation or are in any of the categories, people who live on Native American reservations who often have difficulty getting official government IDs for all sorts of reasons. Um, if you can close that gap and make it equally easy for everybody to get a photo ID, then I think it's not as onerous. But I still don't really get the point. I don't get the necessity of. I mean, here in Maryland, all I have to do to prove that I'm really me and to be able to vote is I present myself at the at the polling place. They ask me my name. I say my name. They ask me my birth date. They ask me. Where my address. Sometimes I think they might ask me for my phone number, but there's certain personal information that you have with your name in the registry. They ask you to confirm that information, and that's how they know that it's really you. And that seems to work because voter fraud is vanishingly rare in this country, even in places that don't require photo ID. Like, it just doesn't happen that often, and it never happens in large enough numbers to affect the outcome of elections. So I just don't get the need. I mean, do I think that people should be allowed to vote by mail wherever they are? Absolutely. I mean, I'll go completely with with the second half. I do think voting by mail should be universal, and that anybody should be able to do it for any election for any reason, because that's also shown to be safe and not vulnerable to fraud. But requiring people to have photo IDs, even if you make it super easy for everybody to get them, I just don't see the necessity for it. I think it's adding an extra step that doesn't need to be there. Um, and finally, last patron question from Radical Bacon, who says, I got my second vaccine on Monday, and today I'm still hurting. Am I a big baby? Well, you have to understand that when I got my, first of all, I got the Johnson and Johnson, so mine was only a one-shot deal, and I suffered no ill effects at all. I mean, other than a little bit of soreness on my arm, which I thought was typical of any time I've ever gotten a shot. Like, it wasn't unusual for any other shot that I've gotten at all. So I didn't have any symptoms. I didn't have any aches and pains. I felt completely fine after my vaccination. So from my perspective, everybody is being a big baby who complains about it. Because what's your problem? I got it and I'm fine. Why are you being such a baby about it? So you have to understand what an asshole I am, and how and what a lacking in empathy, just judgmental prick that I am. Because to me, everybody who suffered adverse effects and is feeling like shit after their vaccination is being a big baby. Because I feel great. I'm kidding, of course. My sympathies to you. And I think I saw some random geek earlier said something about how he got his second vaccination shot and he's not feeling so well. So I'm very sorry for anybody who's suffering negative symptoms as a result of their vaccine. But I'm really glad that you got vaccinated. That's the most important thing. And no, you're not a big baby. You're not a big baby for complaining about physical symptoms. So that is it for the patron questions. So I'm going to go back to me, and then I'm going to go to the live chat, and we can see what everybody's saying in the chat. And I guess I think I have to refresh this because there it is. There's the live chat on the screen. And Serena Geek says he's fine today. Good. And by the way, John Burns, thank you for the super chat. I saw that from earlier. Pattern should have been Patreon. We're cool. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Let's see how everybody's doing. Duralta Trekkie says, so people are losing their shit about the black Superman yelling, Clark Kent is white. Why are we having these? it just scrolled up on me and I missed it. Why are we having these idiots in the comic community? I mean, you can't really get rid of them. How are we going to get rid of them? I think having a black Clark Kent is completely fine. I'm actually, given the other folks that are involved in developing this movie, I mean, I'm really really curious to see it. So, um, you know, it's why are there racists in any fan community, especially for a character like Superman, who is certainly not the kind of character that you would think would be friendly to those people. It's a mystery. Um, Another super chat from John Burns, who says Jeff Goldblum's in a podcast where he plays an elven sorcerer, so one can listen to him playing D&D. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is a great show. Nice to interact. Thank you, John. Thank you again for the super chat. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to listen to that podcast because even though I love Jeff Goldblum, I'm not that interested in listening to Jeff Goldblum play D&D. But maybe someone who is watching who is into D&D would be into that. And yeah, Brooklyn Nine-Nine is it's a really good show. It's a really good show. And yeah, Tay Zande's question. Let me scroll up and answer. Although Tay says that it was already answered. Um, do you pre-write your essays and use a teleprompter? Yes, for the pre-recorded videos, yes, I do. Yes, and but I guess I didn't need to answer that because it was already answered. But yes, almost always these days. There are still some times when I will do an off the cuff sort of extemporaneous video, but almost all of my pre-recorded and edited videos are completely scripted. And yes, I am using a teleprompter. Um, God, that teleprompter is like the best investment I ever made, other than, of course, my camera and my various microphones, because they're a little bit more important than a teleprompter. But teleprompter makes it super easy. Another super chat from John Burns, who says, I can't wait to see Dwayne Johnson and Black Adam. That makes two of us. Opinions no one cares about says, what would you say was the first comic cover or panel that made you really appreciate the artwork as much as the story? Ooh, boy, what a great question. I'm trying to think. I remember it. This is, you remember there used to be a monthly Spider-Man comic called Web of Spider-Man, and the title was rendered in a spider web. And I know that's not like that unusual for a Spider-Man comic. That's been done before, but I think I saw this comic when I was like 5 years old. Okay. So when I was like 5 years old, I saw this Spider-Man comic, and it was like, and the title was rendered as a spider web, and the letters were, shapes in the spider web made out of spider web. And I guess something clicked in my head, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. It's the web of Spider-Man, and it's in a web. Oh my God, I get it, right? It was probably that, at least as I'm sitting here trying to rack my brain and think of it, it was probably that. And also that was like, I mean, when I was really young, like again, I was like five. So, super chat from Red Spiral Ray. Steve, do you think that ideology is more often helpful or harmful to humanity? It's done a lot of good and a lot of bad throughout our history. I think it depends on the ideology, but I do think what causes more harm than ideologies themselves is when we are so stuck on them and we refuse to move off of them. I think being dogmatic is more dangerous than ideology. And I know, yes, ideology can tend to encourage dogmatism, and we just have to remain skeptical and remain self-aware and try to guard against that as best we can. I mean, we're all susceptible to it, but yeah, I don't think ideology is necessarily the problem. I think it's the tendency to dogmatic thinking. um Ian Zanea says, I've been watching Superman and Lois, enjoying it, though if Smallville is as small as they claim, Jonathan would have been 10 times better than anyone on the football team. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he was going to be a superstar in Metropolis. And yeah, you would think he would blow the rest of the team away. It's just one of those things that it's like, just accept it. It's a show. 255 AD says, I think voter ID will pass no matter what. I want to make them hold the debate so they will have to say there's no good reason for this, but we're doing it anyway. Is that valuable? Sure. It's better than having it pass and having them not do that. I mean, I do think you have to sort of weigh the likely outcomes and okay, if we're going to be stuck with this, let's at least hold their feet to the fire. Yeah, I do think that's valuable. Um, Radical Bacon says, would you ever consider being a baseball umpire? I would love to be a baseball umpire. Are you kidding me? I would love to be a baseball umpire. I would love to be an umpire in like a little league game with really young kids. Oh my God, I would break their hearts and crush their dreams. Rock and Donkey asks, have you watched Jupiter's Legacy? I thought it was slightly better than CW shows in terms of quality, but had some plot problems. No, I have not seen, I have not watched Jupiter's Legacy. Steve Schmaling says, hey, Steve, question. I've watched your review of the alternate City on the Edge of Forever episode. Heard a familiar intro song. Are you a fan of Angry Video Game Nerd? James Rolfe. I have watched a lot of his videos. I haven't watched one for a really long time. I can't say that I'm like a super fan, but I have watched a lot of his videos and he has made me laugh a lot. Yes. I mean, I guess I would say I'm a fan, not like a particular fan or, a major fan, but yeah, I've watched his stuff and I think a lot of it's really good. He has made me laugh quite a few times. So Random Geek says, and yet Steve isn't skeptical of the state. Boom. I am. I'm very skeptical of the state. I just think, for better or worse, we're probably stuck with some form of a state in some way. It's not that I'm not skeptical of the state. I think we all need to be, whether we're anarchists or statists or whatever. I think we all must be skeptical of the state, whatever the state is. But it doesn't mean that I think we can do without it in some way. But fair point. Fair point. Jason's here. Opinionville says, where are my perks? Now that I pay you to be my friend, does this mean I can write long meandering questions in the front part of the Q&A? Yes. Actually, I didn't do it this time because I just started the membership thing on Wednesday, but for the next Ask Away, thank you for the prompt, Jason. This is why we're so close. This is why we work so well together. It's like synchronized swimming with the two of us. For the next Ask Away in 2 weeks, I'm going to open up the pre-submission for questions to channel members as well as Patreon patrons. So in the members only section of my community page, I will post a link to the Google form where you can submit a question ahead of time for Ask Away, just like I do on my Patreon page. And yes, within the 1,000-character limit, because there will still be, it's the same Google form, so it'll still be 1,000-character limit. But within the 1,000-character limit, yes, Jason, you can write long meandering questions on the front part of your Q&A. Absolutely. Go for it, my friend. Go for it. And Steve Schmaling says, sorry for the repeat question. Always a pleasure to meet a fellow Misty and fan of James Ruffle. A pleasure to meet you too, my friend. Much bigger fan of Mystery Science Theater than I am of Angry Video Game Nerd, but I'm definitely a fan of both. So yeah, good to meet you too. Radical Bacon says, I want a vlog where Jason and Steve meet for the first time. So do I. Red Spiral Ray says, instead of, oh, I love this, Snack Zyder. I love it. Instead of Snack Zyder, if we had gotten James Gunn to direct Man of Steel, how does that turn out? A hell of a lot better, especially if James Gunn is also writing it. But even if, I mean, it wouldn't be a great movie with that script, no matter who directed it. But if James Gunn directed it instead of Snyder, I think it would definitely have been an improvement. So yes, it may not have been a great or even a good movie with that script, but would it have been better? There's no question in my mind it would have been better. And if James Gunn had been able to write it as well as direct it, I mean, forget about it. It would have been way better. Yes, some random geek. Yes, Jason only has 1,000 characters like the rest of you. Um, Ian Zanea says, thanks to your video, I watched Bar Association on May Day. Does absolutely nothing for the working class, but it was at least entertaining. Well, I'm glad. It's a really good episode. So if I reminded you of it and encouraged you to watch it, then I'm very, very glad. Derogatory Trekkie says, so if there'd be a reboot of the DCEU, which I hope we get, and if they do a Doomsday Saga, who should direct it and why not Zack Snyder? Because Zack Snyder is a terrible man who makes terrible movies. If they have to do Doomsday, like Doomsday would not be on my to-do list. Doomsday is not like, I think everybody knows how I feel. When it comes to Superman, I am just not that interested in, like, I'm not that into Doomsday. I'm not that into Darkseid or Mongol or any of like the sort of intergalactic villains. I like Superman on Earth in Metropolis. That's where I like my Superman. That's where I think like the most interesting Superman stories are. But if we have to do a Doomsday movie, I don't know. The Russo brothers, can you lure them away from Marvel? I mean, can you can you get around what I imagine would be something like the reserve clause in their contracts to stop them from making movies for the distinguished competition? If you could get the Russo brothers away and get them to make the Doomsday Saga, I mean, they proved that they could do it and make it interesting with Thanos in Endgame and Infinity War. So I would say, just based on past experience, I would get one of them to do it. Or if we're gonna pillage the Marvel bullpen in another way, get Taika Waititi to do it, because at least he'd make it funny. So one of those would be off the top of my head. I would say, or maybe Kathy Yan from Birds of Prey, because again, at least she would make it funny and fun. Gerardo Trekkie asks, you like the Street Fighter movie with Kylie Minogue, Ming-Na Wen, and this Belgium dude? Awesome. What is your favorite scene? Wrong Street Fighter movie. That one is more of like a guilty pleasure. It's like, oh, and Garrett, actually, thanks, Garrett. Garrett points out the Russos are not currently contracted with Marvel Studios. Good. I mean, I was only joking, but it's nice to know that they're available, that Warner Brothers could snap them up. Yeah, no, that Street Fighter movie with Van Damme, and also you forgot to mention the late great Raul Julia, star of Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, among other select titles. That's sort of a guilty pleasure. That's like a so bad it's good kind of movie to watch. But and actually, I mean, the original Sonny Chiba Street Fighter is not exactly a masterpiece, but it's also a ton of fun to watch. So, and I would say I prefer it to the video game Street Fighter, but they're both like fun sort of guilty pleasure watches, you know. Oh, it's another super chat from John Burns, who says, if critical of Israel's policies, are we not also critical of Biden, Pelosi, or Chuck Schumer? Which are we more critical of, legislative or executive? I am critical of any kind of uncritical support for Israel when they are using the they're using these rocket attacks being launched from Palestinian territory. But I think like half a dozen Israelis have been killed by those rocket attacks, and something like 50 or 60 Palestinians have been killed by the Israeli retaliation. So, and that has been the story of that conflict for decades, is that the Palestinians do something that maybe they shouldn't have done, that maybe is provocative, but the Israeli response is so grossly out of proportion. It's ridiculous. There is such a power imbalance there. It is not two equal sides. It is one side, the Palestinians, that are completely at the mercy of the Israelis, and it's just not fair. Like, it's just not, that part of it is not that complicated. And so anybody who doesn't acknowledge that and is completely uncritical in their support of Israel in that situation, is suspect, and I think warrants scrutiny. So yes, Pelosi and Schumer and Biden and all, it's a very popular position among politicians in the United States in both parties, and it's unfortunate, and yeah, I think they all deserve to be sort of brought up short on that, for sure. But which is worse? I would say the executive is probably worse, because the president sets the tone, John Burns, airstrike's a form of cancel culture. Okay, that's yeah, okay. Um, Red Spiral Ray says, Steve, we can never give up hope. If I can make it 24 months sober and continuing to take my bipolar medication, we can overcome these GOP slobs. There you go. That's the spirit. And some random geek asks about the Zapatistas. Says the Zapatistas, 300,000 strong in Chiapas, Mexico, have a stateless anarchist society since 1994. Is 25 years enough time to be considered sustainable? I mean, if it works for them, it works for them. Like, I don't know. I other anarchists that I'm familiar with have mentioned that as an example of how it can work. If it works for them, I don't. I mean, who am I to tell them that they're doing it the wrong way? If it's been sustainable and positive for them, and if it is truly an anarchist society, and it's not, you know, they actually I do they even consider themselves anarchists? I think I remember reading something about it where like they meet the definition of an anarchist society by many sort of interpretations of what an anarchist society is, but they don't actually call themselves anarchists. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I would point out though that the Zapatistas the are the only example that I ever hear anarchists cite as proof that it can work. That doesn't mean that it can't work, but I'm just saying there's one example in all of human history or all of recent human history that people point to. That doesn't necessarily tell me that it's the best possible system. If there's in the entire world, there's one place with 300,000 people, which granted is a lot of people, but is not 300 million people to say, aha, see, it works, you know? But yeah, like I say, if it works for them, it works for them and good for them. And, you know, I hope I hope that it continues to work for them. I don't wish them any harm at all. 255 AD says, does Zack Snyder trying to distance himself from his shitty fans change your opinion of him at all? Not really, because I saw that clip where he tried to distance himself from his shitty fans, and it was the very definition of reluctant and half-hearted. It literally sounded like a publicist had whispered to him 30 seconds before the stream started, hey, you have to say something about this. Like, I'm sorry, I don't think his heart is in it. I don't think he thinks it's that important. I don't think unprompted he would have said anything about it. I don't think he cares. He did more than anybody to encourage the release the Snyder cut thing, which was super toxic. Not everybody who tweeted that hashtag was being a dick and was being toxic, but it was overall, it was so aggressive and bullying and toxic. And there are so many Zack Snyder fans online that are just ridiculously hostile and harassing of people, even now, even still after their movie got released and performed underwhelmingly, I have to say, according to the numbers released from HBO Max. Godzilla versus Kong fucking killed it, which, God, yeah. But, you know, no, it doesn't really change my opinion of him. Super chat from John Burns. Thank you once again, who says losing the House or the Senate in 2022 could have far more to do with COVID than anything else. The government being right doesn't mean people are happy. That's a good point. That's a good point. Radical Bacon says a joke about weaponized 5G bats spreading corona got taken down in a Facebook group for misleading information. Thoughts? Well, I mean, Facebook can't tell the difference between a joke and an actual conspiracy theory. So, you know, like, I mean, it sucks, but I kind of understand it. They've sort of turned the dial so far toward, you know, wanting to get rid of coronavirus misinformation that a lot of stuff gets flagged that doesn't deserve to be, because it's obviously a joke, and the algorithm just can't tell the difference. And apparently they're just too cheap to hire enough real people to sort through this stuff and be able to tell the difference when the algorithm does get something wrong. I mean, that's really the solution. The solution is to hire more people to actually go through these cases when the algorithm tags something as inappropriate and you know, bans the person or removes the content, and then you should be able to appeal and get it looked at by an actual person. And that happens sometimes, but not nearly as often as it should, because they're too cheap to hire enough people to do it and to pay them enough to make it worth it. So that's what really needs to happen. But I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Let's see. Some random geek. Yeah, that's a good point. You can't shit on white people on Facebook. No, you can't. And yeah, Aaliyah Clark, that's another good example. Can the trumpeters, I like that name for them. Can the trumpeters even tell that it's a joke? No, they have really, I mean, Greg Gutfeld, anybody? Like, they have really terrible senses of humor. Like, Christy Winters shared a video clip on Twitter this morning of, apparently it was the opening monologue from Greg Gutfeld's late night show that he does now. And it was a 6-minute video clip. I got 3 minutes into it and I couldn't take it anymore. And it's not just that it was racist, although it was, and it's not just that it was incredibly transphobic, although it was. It's that it was so fucking hackneyed. Like, the jokes were so weak. Like, you think I go for low-hanging fruit and obvious jokes? Like, they took the occasion of there being a little bit of a gas shortage in the South right now because of the cyber attack on the pipeline, right? So there are a lot of people in the southeast of the United States who gas stations are running out of gas. Hopefully it's not going to last very much longer. In a few days it'll be taken care of. But they use that as the jumping off point to do this just excruciatingly unfunny montage of, like, it's just like the 70s. And there weren't even jokes. Like, there weren't even jokes. It was just like, there was a gas shortage in the 70s and there's kind of a gas shortage now. It's the same thing. It's just like the 70s. And it's like, what? It's not just that the jokes are bad and that they're bigoted. It's that they're just so unskilled at the basics of comedy. Like, of course the Trump supporters can't tell a joke from a non-joke. They don't know what jokes are. They have the worst senses of humor. They're so bad at comedy. So bad at comedy. Yeah, Dana, exactly. Wait, conservatives have senses of humor? Yeah, exactly. Of course they don't. They don't seem to. 255 AD says in 1632, the town that gets sent back in time has a small power plant. Does that change your answer? Not really, but it would be nice to be able to charge my phone and charge my laptop battery. And 255 AD also says, should you be able to get people removed from office if you can prove they were lying about upholding the SOCDEM Constitution? Well, yeah. I think there should be an impeachment process or a recall process. I think there should be a more of an ability to recall public officials under our current Constitution. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. Yeah, some random geek. That's a good point. Cutting down on labor costs is the surest way to make money. You're right. That's why, that's why they don't do it, because they'd have to pay people to do it. I mean, like I said, they're too cheap to do it. Geraldo Trekkie says, concerning Trick Simpson's question and the power imbalance, that would mean no Picard Crusher, no Sam Jack. That would get rid of all of these storylines. Not necessarily. I think it would just change them. I think you could still do like Picard Crusher storylines. I think you would just have to acknowledge the power imbalance. It doesn't mean that you couldn't ever show characters who are in the chain of command date each other. It just means that you would have to make those concerns part of the story, you know? Um, Jason, who am I going to call in 1632? I don't know. Maybe I just want to play some games. Maybe I just want to, maybe I want to play two dots. Is that so fucking wrong? If you play it without being connected to the internet, you don't get any ads. So actually traveling back to 1632 and playing two dots is like the best way to play two dots. Motherfucker. You thought you were going to trip me up? Huh? Oh, there's no cell service in 1632. Who are you going to call? Not you, apparently. This is why people think we're not actually friends, because of shit like this. And it's your fault. You started. Cast Iron Chaos asks, should Picard have retired after the Battle of Wolf 359? If so, there would never have been the two-part Gambit, the one where Picard became a space pirate. Well, these are like the this is where you strike the balance between what would happen in real life and what makes the better story. And for me, both as an audience member and as a writer myself, you always choose what makes the better story. Always. I don't care, because you're right. In reality, Picard would never have been allowed to return to the captaincy of the Enterprise so soon. Certainly, they probably would have forced him to retire. They would have said, "Look, Jean-Luc, you've done your bit. You've served your time. You have been a great hero and servant of the Federation, and now it's time for you to ride off into the sunset. Thank you very much. We're glad we got you back." Right? They wouldn't have put him right back in the captain's chair, but he was the protagonist of a weekly TV series about him and his starship, so that's where he went. You draw those lines and you do what is best for the story. I'm the type of person, especially with a show like Star Trek, which is a fantasy show anyway, unless it's something like completely unrealistic or unmotivated, unjustified, like character interactions or character behavior. When you're talking about stuff like plot developments and what happens in the story, like I don't give a single shit if it's unrealistic. I don't care at all. Tell me a good story. Queer Pro Black asks, another question, as an actual black person, notice that Bill Maher or Fox News will often have black people who only hate BLM, social justice. What might their objective be? Well, I mean, it's probably conservatives wanting to cover their asses as far as racism, right? We're not racist. Look, there are black people on our side. How can we be racist? If we're so racist, why are all these black people coming on? And if Black Lives Matter is so great, then how comes this black person doesn't like it? It's ass covering. It's ass covering. And unfortunately, the black folks that participate in that, and I'm sure that they sincerely, like, if a black person goes on Fox News and is talking shit about Black Lives Matter, or is saying things like that institutional racism doesn't exist or whatever, I assume that they do genuinely believe that. They're not just saying that to say it. But whether they genuinely believe it or not, I mean, they're being used. They're being used as cover by racists who are pushing racist talking points. They're being used as stooges. And it sucks. But I think that's it. I think that's it. Like that's why that's why they have, if Bill Maher or Fox News brings a black voice on to speak, it's someone who is going to speak a right-wing talking point, because that's the game. Super chat from Ian Zanea, thank you very much, who says, regarding Godzilla versus Kong, in my opinion, the Millie Bobby Brown story added nothing and should have been cut. It felt added in reshoots to appeal to teens. Without it, the movie would be a nice 90 minutes. Thoughts? I don't think it was added in reshoots. I am virtually certain, I would bet my life, almost, not quite, but I would almost bet my life that was originally into, because her character is from Godzilla King of the Monsters. You know, like she's a returning character, and she's not like a superstar, but she's a known face. Like she's a star. People know who she is because of Stranger Things. So she adds to the box office appeal of the movie, and that's why she's. I agree with you about the story. I agree with you that they could completely remove that subplot and maybe just add a couple lines of dialogue or tweak things a little bit here and there, and the movie would be just as good, if not better. And it would be, yeah, it would be a nice tight 90 minutes. That would be terrific. I agree with you about that, but no, I don't think it was a reshoot. I don't think it was an afterthought. I think she was always supposed to be there, and it's because she's a star and she has a certain level of name recognition at this point, and she was playing a character who was introduced in the previous movie, and they wanted her back to add some continuity as well as the star power. So I think that was the reason. Super chat from John Burns. Thank you very much. Says, in the NFL, it's realistic for Jerry Rice and Tom Brady to play until their 40s, but running backs get paid lots for their early years, which is safer in the long run, so they can retire earlier and healthier. Yay, capitalism. Okay. Thanks for sharing that insight into the NFL. Oh, Duralta Trekkie has a great question. Who is my most favorite Perry White? Oh, Lane Smith is good. I don't know. Lane Smith was a really good Perry. I mean, Frank Langella was good too, but he was only in one movie. Like he could have been my favorite, but he was only in the one movie, so it's hard to choose him. But he was good. I got to go Adventures of Superman though. I got to go Adventures of Superman. What was the actor's name? Was it John Hammond? Let me see. John Hamilton, not John Hammond. John Hamilton played Perry White in the George Reeves Adventures of Superman TV show. I think he's probably my favorite Perry. But yeah, I mean, but from the Chris Reeve movies. Oh fuck, I'm blanking on his name now. Jackie Cooper. How did I forget fucking Jackie Cooper? That's disappointing. I forgot Jackie Cooper. But anyway, Jackie Cooper was Perry in the Chris Reeve movies, and he was a good one too. But I think I got to go with John Hamilton from Adventures of Superman. John Burns' super chat says, "How about Tom Wilson to play a Perry White?" I'm gonna have to Google who Tom Wilson is. Do you mean the hockey player, or do you mean Biff from Back to the Future? I'm assuming you mean Biff from Back to the Future. I think he might be a decent like TV Perry. I don't know if I would cast him to play Perry in a movie, but if we're doing like a Superman TV show, I might give him a shot. Not the top of my list. Yes, Jason. Oh, yes, my 40. Oh, the memory is going. Oh, the memory is going. Soon I'll be a drooling vegetable. Won't that be nice? Thanks, buddy. You warned me. You warned me. Jackie, yeah, and there you corrected me too early in the chat. I didn't see that, Jackie Cooper. The Rockin' Donkey says, do you think Riker does that thing with his leg to ventilate his sweaty balls in those uniforms? He does that because he has a bad back, you monster. How dare you mock his injury? That noble Starfleet officer who has saved the universe countless times, the defeater of the Borg, the savior of Captain Picard. How dare you accuse him of having sweaty balls? It's because he has a bad back, because he's been carrying the Federation all by himself for all these years. You take it back. You take it back. You take it the fuck back right now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You touched a nerve. I just, you talk shit about my man. You talk shit about my. Ooh, I've got his fucking picture on the wall. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's all right. It's all right. I'm sorry. Queer pro black, yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like Liz Cheney, yeah. Um, David C. Drake, this is getting intense. I know, right? I can turn it off and on like that, but I cannot snap my fingers, and that's a shoot. I don't know how to snap my fingers. John Burns, another super chat. Thank you very much. Says players in the NFL were being paid so little they were going to Canada to play football. Many had to play until they were 40 and crippled. Not today. Well, good. I'm glad that that's no longer the case. I wouldn't want to have to play football in Canada either. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You're right, Dana. I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry at all. Yeah, Jason, exactly. So everybody on the Enterprise D knows what Riker's junk smells like. Apparently, because he's always doing the leg thing, right? I think that is the implication there. Deralta Trekkie says if the original idea concerning Will and Thomas Riker would have played out the way they wanted it to, Riker or Will dies and Thomas takes over, would you still have liked that? No, that's a terrible idea, especially in season 6 of a long running show. That's a terrible idea. That's spider clone stuff. That's spider clone stuff. No. That's a bad idea. That it's very good that they did not do that. Yeah, no. That's not that. It would have been better to just kill him and have him leave the show than kill him and then replace him with an identical character played by the same actor. That's a terrible idea. The way they went with Tom was much better. 255 AD says, should individuals be able to take politicians to court and get them removed for not supporting the SOCDEM Constitution? Yeah. Why not? I mean, like I said earlier in my answer to your question, I think any elected official who is supposedly serving in a government under a constitution, if you can prove that they don't actually support that constitution, I think that should be grounds for removal from office. I mean, it's not an inalienable right to serve in an elected office. If you serve in an elected office, and one of the conditions that to your service in that office is that you will abide by the laws under the Constitution and you will uphold that Constitution and its principles. And we do require that elected officials take such an oath. Then if you could prove that they don't actually support it, then they have violated their oath. And I think it's fair to see that as grounds for removal from office. Yeah, why not? Sure. Radical Bacon says, on TikTok, there was someone saying that Snape was pock-coded because he has black eyes. Thoughts? I have no idea what that means. I am 41 years old. I have no idea what that means. Yeah, Ghost will, right. You would, if you take them to court, you would have to prove that they didn't support the Constitution, and that could be difficult. But I mean, the idea, in principle, I think it's sound. Ooh, Jason, now see, that's better. They should have both Rikers in an accident and one dies and we are never told which one survived. But I mean, I like that, but like, how would that work? Would the surviving Riker have amnesia? I mean, or would he just not Will dies, Thomas survives, and he just tells everybody that he's actually Will? I'm not sure how you would get that to work, but the idea is better than, killing Will and just having Tom take his place. Yeah, definitely. They're all Trekkie. Pock? People of colorful kidneys? That's what I thought it meant. John Burns asks, okay, can I get a ratified meaning of the Second Amendment by the Supreme Court of the United States of America before we see who does and doesn't support the Constitution? Well, that is a good point, because not just the Second Amendment, but the Constitution overall. I mean, it is open to interpretation, especially given the fact that our Constitution in the United States is 250 years old. I mean, or 240 years old, something like that. It was written literally in a bygone era. So it is very much open to interpretation. And that is another layer of complexity as far as, taking someone to court to remove them from office because they don't support the Constitution. But nevertheless, I stand by my answer, which is, in theory, in principle, I think it's an acceptable idea to view not upholding the Constitution that you swore to uphold as grounds to be removed from office. Okay, Radical Bacon. Instead of saying POC, they say POC. So he was coded as a person of color. I gotcha. I've never heard that before. I don't know. It doesn't really make sense to me. I mean, now granted, I am a white person and I never read the books. I've only seen the movies. So take that for what it's worth. I mean, my opinion is basically of no value here, but since you asked, it never occurred to me that Snape was being coded as a person of color at all. But I don't know. I'm not familiar with the discourse there. Geraldo Trekkie says, I got to say, I try to write more pages of my books and I notice it's not fun anymore. I think I'm starting to get writer's block. How do you deal with writer's block and rejections? Keep writing. Like, I mean, it sucks and it's a shitty thing to say, but I don't know of any treatment for writer's block other than writing. And sometimes you have to force yourself to write. And sometimes what you write will be dog shit. And you will know as you're writing it that you're not going to use it, that you're going to have to change it or revise it drastically. But you just need to prime the pump. You just need to get it flowing, get the creative juices flowing again. And I know nobody wants to hear that, but in my experience, the only thing that gets you past writer's block is writing. And sometimes that means making yourself write, even when you don't want to. And even though you know that what you're writing is going to suck. Kirok 2011 with a super chat. Thank you very much. Says, referring to the Thomas Riker chat, I dislike how they ended that character in DS9. I felt there should have been some closure, especially after the war. Yeah, I get that. I mean, on the one hand, it wasn't like Tom was not even a recurring character in the show. I mean, if they would have done a Deep Space Nine episode where they would have gone back and rescued Thomas Riker from the Dominion or from the Cardassian prison camp, that would have been great. I would have loved that. But I didn't necessarily expect it because Tom was, I mean, I kind of viewed that as that was the ending to the character, I didn't really expect a follow-up on that. Because Tom wasn't, he was a one-off character on TNG and he was a one-off character on DS9. He wasn't like a regular recurring character where you would have, like, if Rom had been thrown in prison, like okay, well, they're going back to get Rom at some point, they're not just going to leave him there forever. But with Tom, I didn't necessarily expect anything different. But if they had, that could have been terrific. Dana, yes, of course I hate writing. Yes, I do. I do hate writing sometimes. Not as often as you do, and not as consistently as you do. But yes, it's probably more accurate to say it's not. I don't usually hate writing. But there are times when I know I have to write and I don't want to, or I feel like I can't, or I feel like it's not in me to do. But yet I have like a video I need to get done and I need to write. And I hate that. I hate knowing that I need to write and feeling like I can't or feeling like I don't want to. That sucks. I don't know if it's necessarily the same thing as hating writing, although maybe I'm putting too fine a point on it. Yeah, I do sometimes. Queer Pro Black says, not sure if it's been asked by any thoughts on Colin Kaepernick out of the NFL for 4 years and Tim Tebow out of the NFL 6 years getting signed. Was Tebow signed? I don't. I mean, full disclosure, I don't follow football. I don't like football. I positively dislike NFL football, gridiron style football. So I don't follow it. I mean, I have incredible admiration for Colin Kaepernick, and I think it's bullshit that he hasn't been signed by a team when clearly he wants to play and is capable of playing. I think we all know what the deal is there. But as for and you know, if you're telling me that Tebow has been out of the game for a while and has gotten signed again, I mean, I think we know what the deal is. Like, I think we know why that is. What's the difference between Colin Kaepernick and Tim Tebow? What's the important difference in this case? I think we know what the difference is. Yes, Dana, I know. Believe me, my dear, I know exactly how you feel about writing. I know exactly how you feel about writing. They're out to Trekkie. What is my least favorite Will Riker episode? Probably the second Q episode from season 1 of TNG, where Riker gets the Q powers for the episode. I mean, it's kind of easy to pick a first season episode because there aren't very many good first season episodes at all for anybody. But yeah, it was an early Riker centric episode, and it's just not good at all. It's a really bad episode. 255 AD has a great point. The question about meeting famous dead people in the afterlife. Wouldn't they all have shitty views? Like, I'm sure Babe would be a misogynist and racist by our standards, which is why I would prefer just to have him play baseball. And maybe having a beer with him wouldn't be the best idea. Like, if anybody who listens to late seating knows, because we talked about it a little bit just now, or just a couple weeks ago in our review of The Sandlot, and we really talked about it in our review of the Babe Ruth story. I think Jason and I are both of the same mind that for whatever of a good baseball player he was, and I personally think Babe Ruth was probably the best baseball player who ever played, or at least the best white baseball player who ever played. We may never know who the best overall player was because black players were kept out of the major leagues for generations. But as far as we can tell, as far as we know, Babe Ruth may have been the best baseball player who ever lived. But that aside, in his personal life, he was a fucking nightmare. He was a monster. He was a disaster. He was horrible. And, so yeah, just play baseball, babe. Play baseball. That's cool. We don't need to talk. We don't need to talk. That's cool. Radical Bacon, would I like to have a beer with Avery Brooks? Oh my God, yes. Yes, but it has to be in a classy joint that's got like a nice lounge with a piano. And we need to get Avery over to that piano at some point. I don't even know if you'd need to get him drunk. I think he might just show up, and I might like, oh, I'm supposed to meet Avery Brooks here at 7:00. I don't see. Oh, he's already over at the piano. Like, I would love to hang out with Avery Brooks for a night. Absolutely. Yeah, Daryl, exactly. That's why I say that Babe is probably the best player who ever lived, because not only was he a fantastic hitter and not just a power hitter, he was a great hitter for average too. He was a great slugger and a great hitter. And in the earlier years of his career, he was a legendary pitcher. He was a fantastic pitcher. So yeah, he's one of the greatest pitchers and one of the greatest hitters who ever played the game. So I think Babe Ruth. Again, you have to account for the fact that black ball players were banned from the game for the first 50 years of professional baseball. For the first 50 years of what we now think of as the modern major leagues, the American and the National League. Professional baseball actually goes back a lot further than that, but for what we would recognize as professional baseball as the major leagues, black players were banned until 1947. So you have to take that into account. But taking that into account, I would say Babe Ruth is the best player ever, and it's because of that. It's because of that. Okay, so Tebow signed. Thanks for telling me, Queer Pro Black. I didn't know because I don't follow it, you know. But yeah, it's bullshit. If Tebow got signed and Kaepernick hasn't, it's gee. I wonder what the reason is for that. Oh, John Burns with the super chat. You should have a meal with Babe and Ty Cobb. Good lord. Yeah. I think that that would make Babe seem a lot better. I think that would be how I could stand having a dinner with Babe Ruth, is invite Ty Cobb along, and I'd be like, you know who's really cool? Babe Ruth. um, Dana, have I ever done? Will I ever do any videos about baseball? Yes, I've done videos about baseball players. Um, I think I've done I may have done a video about Babe Ruth. I can't remember, but I know I did a video about Honus Wagner. One of my 5 things videos was about Honus Wagner. I did it back when it was called 5 Stupid Things before I changed the title. I did one of those about baseball. So I've done videos about baseball before. It's been a while and I haven't done that many of them, but yeah, I've done baseball themed or baseball related videos for sure. Uh, Deralta Trekkie, I do not have a favorite Andromeda episode because I have never watched it. Sorry. 255 AD. I bet Babe called women broads and far worse than that. Yeah. I'm sure Babe called women all sorts of things that we would hear him say that now and we'd think, oh shit. Yeah, for sure. Queer Pro Black, the Enterprise series finale is the worst Riker episode. Yeah, I mean, through no fault of Jonathan Frakes, I think you could make a good case for that. It's at least it's the most baffling, the most upsetting, you know. Ghost Wheel says baseball if you can't watch it live, TV or radio. I think I'm going to say radio. And you know, over the course of my life, I have probably listened to more ball games on the radio than I have watched them on TV. Baseball is weird. Baseball is one of those sports, and I say this to people who are not big baseball fans, who find it kind of boring, and who say like, you know, it's such a dull game. How can you pay attention to that? And first of all, I mean, I'm a fan. I don't find it a boring game, but there is something about baseball that even really diehard fans can watch a baseball game or can listen to a baseball game and not necessarily be paying strict attention to it. Like that's a very common thing. If you're at the ballpark with someone, you know, you're not just like sitting there, you know, like riveted to the field the entire time. You're hanging out, you're talking. If you came with a group, you're kind of, you know, talking and chatting and catching up and getting food and, you know, and you're watching the game, but you're not like the game isn't the only thing that's in your attention. And listening to a game on the radio is very similar, you know. And people do that with the game on TV too. Like it's, you know, you'll have the ball game on TV and you're in the kitchen or you're in the dining room and you're hanging out, you're talking to people that are there, but you're not focused on the game. You're kind of looking at it and watching it and paying attention, keeping track of it, but not like riveted by it. Um, and listening to a ball game on the radio really allows you to do that. You can have it on, but you're doing something else and you're listening, but you're not like, you know, you're doing something else. So yeah. And because of that, and I'm definitely that kind of a baseball watcher, unless it's like a really important game. If it's like a World Series game, then I'm probably watching it, you know, and not paying attention to anything else. But if it's like a mid-season game, especially if it's like an Orioles game and they're not in title contention, which is probably the case, you know, you listen to it on the radio. And I think I've probably listened to more games on the radio than I have on TV. Yeah. Some random geek. Yeah, a lot of people who are baseball fans are stat nerds. That's for sure. I don't really consider myself a stat nerd. I'm not super interested in the stats. But having said that, I do think stats are so important in baseball. And you know, it was a point brought up in the Ken Burns baseball documentary that even most casual baseball fans, you know, if you say 60 home runs, they know what you mean. If you say 56 game hitting streak, like they know what you're talking about. If you say 755 or 714, or 402, like they they get it. Like they know that there are certain stats in baseball that even for fans that don't necessarily give a shit about stats, generally speaking, if you say how many home runs did Babe Ruth hit in 1927, most people or most casual baseball fans are going to know, oh yeah, 60 home runs. If you say how many home runs did Roger Maris hit in 1961, they'll say, oh, 61. It's not that uncommon, even for people who aren't stat nerds. And Thomas, I have not seen that TurboTax commercial. Says, ask, have I seen the TurboTax commercial with the guy eating spaghetti under a chandelier? He reminds me of you if you had longer, curlier hair. I have never seen it. Sorry. Geraldo Trekkie, the only thing I know about baseball is you can explain time to wormhole aliens with it. Yes, you can. And that may be the best thing about baseball. Okay, last question from 255 AD, and then I'm going to. Oh, and by the way, John Burns, I never acknowledged your last super chat. You said Tim Tebow was signed as a tight end. Kaepernick is 2 of football, and I'm unsure if he wants to play anything but quarterback, but he could be a very good wide receiver. Okay, I don't know from football, so I don't know. Anyway, 255 AD says, how much do you want to bet a lot of the famous white players would not want to let the black players into the Afterlife bar you're all meeting in? I mean, it's probably a good bet. It's probably a good bet. There were lots of racist people back then, and there are lots of racist people now, but especially by today's standards, there were quite a few racist people back then. Radical Bacon asked, would I watch baseball if the action was condensed an 18-minute game? God, that'd be a fast baseball game. I might watch it just to see, but it's not my preference. I like to have an afternoon to watch a baseball game. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Some Random Geek, thank you very much for reminding me about the charity links. Charitylinks.page is where you can go to check out some links to fundraisers and PayPal links and such to some friends of ours who are in financial crisis who could very, very much use your help. I encourage you to go follow the link, go to charitylinks.page and help out our friends who need a helping hand. Also, don't forget that if you want to support my channel, you can always become a supporter through Patreon, patreon.com/Steve Shives. Support of any level allows you to submit questions ahead of time for Ask Away streams. And starting this week, you can also become a member of my channel. And you can do that just by clicking the join button, which is down there somewhere. On the YouTube page, and it's also on my channel page. Click the join button and decide what tier you want to support, whether it's 99 cents a month, $4.99 a month, or $9.99 a month are the 3 tiers I have available right now. And you can support the channel that way, just directly through YouTube. And starting with the next edition of Ask Away, all members at all levels will also be able to pre-submit questions for Ask Away that I will answer at the beginning, like I do for the patron questions. So keep that in mind, and thank you all for supporting the channel in whichever way you choose to support it, whether it's Patreon or joining as a member or whatever. Also, don't forget that in addition to the YouTube thing, I co-host a couple of podcasts that are a part of the Lemmy Listen family of podcasts, including Late Seating, the movie review podcast that I host with the brilliant and hilarious Jason Harding. Our most recent review went up last week, and it was my birthday movie, the live-action Masters of the Universe. And our next review, we're recording it this weekend, and it's going up next week, and it will be David Byrne's True Stories. And this week, actually today, a new episode of the other podcast that I am a cast member on, the Ensign's Law, which is the Star Trek themed comedy podcast, went up, and that is myself and Jason and the lovely and talented Dana Cole. We are all 3 on the show now as regulars, playing low-ranking officers, serving aboard a certain Federation starship as it embarks on a certain continuing mission to explore strange new worlds. Our episode that went up today is such a great episode. It is sort of us dipping our toes into the world of farce. It's a very farcical episode, and it turned out so well. It was so much fun to record, and it's just hilarious. It's one of them their comic misunderstandings, which I think we did a really good job with it, and you can check that out at letmelistenpodcast.com. The links are in the description. Listen to our podcasts; they're really good. And that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I will be back on on Monday. There will be a new Ask a Professional YouTuber video. On Wednesday, there will be a new Where Do We Go From Here video about gun control. And Wednesday is also Wednesday night for Trek Reluctantly, where Dana and I will be watching Deep Space Nine. This time we'll be watching the episode Progress, a really awesome episode from the first season of DS9. And then a week from tonight, Dana and I will be streaming together again to do the next chapter of The Other Westmore for our Readaway series. So I hope you can join me/us for some or all of that. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. And I will see you around, everybody. Bye.